Hi, everyone. So I'm the son of immigrants. Both my parents are from Sri Lanka. So when I was in high school, I had no idea what I was doing. I had a guidance counselor, and I had friends who had older siblings who told me all of their advice, but at the end of the day, I didn't really know what I was doing when I was applying to schools. So I applied to a bunch of schools, and I knew most likely that if I got into UVA, I'd probably come here because I'm from Virginia. It made sense. And so when I got my acceptance letter, I didn't look at any other schools. I didn't visit any other schools, really. I just committed. And it would have been really scary had it not been for the fact that I knew if I came to UVA, I'd be here with one of the best friends I'd ever had. His name was John Paul Popovich, and we grew up together. We'd known each other since we were like 11 years old. We did everything together. And when we both got into UVA, we knew we just had to be roommates. We had to do it. We were going to come here and do the college thing, you know, everything you see in the movies and more, maybe not everything you see in the movies, but we were going to come here and we were going to live out our lives and we were going to have a fantastic time. So we were super excited, and that's what we did. We came here to UVA that first semester, and I had the best semester of my life. I was focusing on grades and having a great time, but let me tell you a little bit about JP and why we got along so well. So in high school, I was more of a reserved kid. I didn't talk as much, and I would hang out with people, but JP is the one who really always brought me out of my shell. He was a happy-go-lucky, energetic, always positive kind of kid who was so ready to face the world and any challenges that brought before him, and he always dragged me along on whatever adventures he was going through. So that's how we approached college. Any night I was sitting in my room doing chemistry homework, hating my life, he would drag me out to go play basketball with friends or go hang out in the quad or do whatever we had to do, and it was fantastic. And so that semester, I was having the time of my life. I was joining clubs and playing sports and making friends with my hall, and everything I did here, I had my best friend by my side, so nothing could go wrong. And there were so many moments when I would think to myself, there's no reason this kid should be this excited about what he's doing right now, okay? So, for example, he took Arabic, Intro to Arabic, his first year, his first semester, and he'd never spoken a lick of Arabic in his life. He could barely speak any other language, or English for that matter, but that being said, he took Arabic, and he would go in the mornings, he'd be studying, and he'd say, Rehan, I have a quiz today, and I said, okay, good luck. He'd come back to the room later that afternoon with the biggest smile on his face, and I said, oh, the quiz went great, right? And he's like, I absolutely failed that, 100% I failed that quiz. But he was so excited because he was passionate about it, and he was excited to be trying something new, and that's what I loved about him. And so we went through the semester, we had a fantastic time, and he was always a very lucky kid. We get to finals our first semester here, and he got to go home a whole 4 days earlier than me. I was stuck here waiting for that chem exam on the last day. And he went home, and I remember that day I texted him. I was at the library studying, he was headed home. I said, make sure you lock the door, because he always forgot to lock the door. And we didn't really talk after that, because I knew I'd see him when we got home. We'd go visit all our high school friends or whatever we had to do. And so I went about the rest of my days at school knowing JP was at home, and I finished my exams. My dad came to pick me up that last day. I was exhausted. We packed up the car, filled it with all the laundry I could possibly put in there. And we drove home, and on the drive home, it was late at night, so I fell asleep. And then we got back to my driveway. I woke up as we were pulling in, and I checked my phone, as I always do, and I had a bunch of missed messages, but I also had a missed call from a 434 number. And I was like, okay, that's Charlottesville's area code. I should probably call this back. So I called the number back, and the voice at the other end says, hello, Rehan, this is Dean Groves. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. What did we do? But what Dean Groves actually called to tell me was, he said, Rehan, I need you to go find your family. I need you to sit down. Your roommate has passed away. And I didn't know what to say to that. I had no idea how that could be possible because I'd seen him 3 days before that. And he said, your roommate passed away in his family's home last night, and I wanted to make sure you knew first before we sent an email out to the rest of your hall and the rest of the university community. So I immediately called JP's parents, and I went over to their house, and they told me that he had just never woken up that morning. So I'll be honest with you guys, he had epilepsy his whole life. And it was something we knew about. It was something that was under control for our entire childhood. When he was at school, I made sure he took his meds every morning, and he was great. He was the fittest kid you'd ever see. He was a state champion swimmer. He was fantastically fit, and again, happy-go-lucky all the time. And at that point in our lives, he hadn't had an episode for almost 2 years, if I could remember properly. But sometimes life gets to you, and there's nothing you can really do about that. And so that winter break was probably the hardest month of my life. I was sitting at home, friends were coming over, and I just didn't want to talk to anyone. I told my parents over and over again, I'm not going back to school. I can't go back there. The home I built for myself there is dependent on me being there with John Paul, so I'm not going back. I'm going to take a semester off, and then I'll transfer out. And my parents said, okay, whatever you need to do. So we go through the whole month. I go to JP's funeral. I speak there for a bit, or I try to. And we get through the end of the month. We get to the day before I have to decide if I'm coming back for the spring term. And my dad sits me down, and he says, Rehan, look, I've talked to your mom. We've talked to everyone, and you're going back to school. We're not giving you a choice. And I got into a huge blowout fight with my dad. I thought he was doing the worst thing in the world he could possibly do to me, but it was probably the best thing he ever did for me. But he packed my bag for me, he threw all my junk in the car, and he dragged me back to school. And so I came back to my bedroom that I used to share with John Paul, and obviously Dean Groves and everyone offered me the chance to switch rooms, but I didn't take it because I didn't want to be that new kid on a hall who had to explain why I moved, but it was kind of a catch-22 because I realized that I couldn't sleep in that room anymore. I couldn't share that space with someone I used to love, and now I couldn't be in that space. And so that semester I shut down. I shut myself off from everything because the person who brought me to this school to get me out into the world was gone now. So I immediately went back into my shell. I stopped going to my classes. I started failing them. I stopped hanging out with my friends. I quit all my clubs, and I would do the bare minimum. When I could go to class and try to pay attention, I would, but that was really it. And so that semester, I quit on UVA. I started filling out applications to transfer right away. But the reason I am here 4 years later, and the reason that I love Charlottesville and I love this school, is because even though I quit on UVA, it never quit on me. So at that point, I had gotten very used to this idea that people would come up to me all the time and they'd say, Rehan, I heard your story. I'm so sorry for your loss. And people did that all the time at home. People did it in Charlottesville still. It happened everywhere I went. And I was sick and tired of it because what does that do for me? That doesn't bring back my best friend. But the difference is here at UVA, that's not where it stopped. Kids would have come up to me, random strangers who I'd never met in my life, who had heard my story, people who could go about their daily lives, completely indifferent to the fact that I was going through something incredibly hard, would come up to me and say, Rehan, I'm so sorry for your loss, but you know what? Let's go grab dinner on the corner tonight. Let's go to a basketball game together. Why don't we take this class together next semester? Let's go join this club. And I realized that something very strange was happening here, right? Because there's no reason they should have been doing this. But what I realized was this was just another way JP was reaching out to me. This was how he was pushing me into this community once again. And so I realized I had to give it a shot. I had to embrace my best friend's legacy one more time and throw myself into this community, and that's what I did, and that's how I found my home over again. So I did it twice here. I joined a bunch of clubs. I started going to classes. I started meeting friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. I became a resident advisor that semester because I wanted to give back to the first years who were trying to find their home here again. I started giving tours last semester, even though I was super old to do that, because I love meeting people and showing them that this is a place that matters and this is a place that's home because of the people that exist here. So yes, we have fantastic academics and we have incredible sports, and this school is a phenomenal place to be and it's super beautiful, but what matters here is the people. And that is why I'm so insistent that this is a place where you do build those bridges. So every day, I find myself getting up in the morning, and yes, I'm way more outgoing than I used to be, and I can thank JP a lot for that, but every day there are some moments where I realize I should push myself this time. And JP would always say this cliche thing. He would say, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone, right? And I said, JP, go stitch that on a pillow. But every day, when I find myself having to force myself to do something that pushes me out of my comfort zone, like this, for example, I think of JP and he pushes me forward. So just keep swimming, and thank you guys.